Hello, Disney's $30 fee to watch a movie. We meet again.
Because you don't trust anyone, you just have to take the first step. I just shape changed.
Dragons can do that?
Look how close my butt is to my head. It's gonna make digestion so much faster.
In theaters or ordered on Disney Plus with Premier Access, March 5th.
I will say one interesting thing to come out of Perfect Cell showing up is this new change that movie studios have adapted. The $20 rented home new release rental. The idea that you can watch movies that were intended for theaters at home because Perfect Cell's out there. And I'm curious how much it's going to show up because it's an interesting concept to think about and it might make movies a little bit more accessible to people. It'll be an interesting thing to see if it lasts beyond this Perfect Cell saga we're in. However, with this concept, However, while this concept itself is interesting, there was one company that had to push it to the limit. And of course, it had to be the Great Mouse Empire. I'm of two minds when it comes to Disney. When it comes to the creators, I'm very supportive of them. I think the artists and the filmmakers that all work there are doing fantastic work. Some of the best animated content, both on TV and in film, has been coming from Disney and Disney subsidiaries like Pixar. And the MCU is one of my favorite ongoing series of movies. And I really think they're doing fantastic work. They really hooked me into Marvel content the way that none of the TV shows or comics were able to do. Of course, then there's the business side of things, which has some of the worst business practices, just short of Nestle with their slave labor. Just the way that Disney will nickel and dime you for every chance they can get, overcharging you at every opportunity. The way they mistreat the theaters that run their movies. The way they mistreat their workers, both before and during the Perfect Cell saga. And not to mention the fact that they will take their lawyers and sick them on preschools and elementary schools for painting Winnie the Pooh or Mickey Mouse. Yet all of the right-wing groups that use the Punisher logo, now owned by Disney, are seemingly not challenged for copyright infringement. Interesting how that works, isn't it, Iger? So while these other movies will be made available for a rental fee of $20 through whatever service you use that you don't have to pay for already, like Apple TV or Google Play or Redbox or something like that, Disney expects you to pay $10 a month and then $30 for a movie that's going to be free on their service in 3 months. Yeah, they did that with Mulan, and they had the osmium grade density balls to sit there and announce that Mulan would be $30 to watch and then free 3 months later. Same thing is going on with Raya right here. So yeah, I'm of two minds when it comes to Disney. And so we've come to the second $30 exclusive home release for Disney Plus. And while Goku and Gohan are starting to show up to fight Perfect Cell, I wasn't feeling comfortable enough to go out to see new releases in theaters. And I have been hearing good things about Raya and the Last Dragon, so I did want to check it out for myself. Was it worth the $30 extra on top of Disney Plus? Oh, hell no. No movie is worth that. This was a very good movie, though, I'll say that. The biggest takeaway I got from this was just how much of South Asian culture and imagery was used in this movie. From the environments, to the characters, to the architecture, to even the martial arts. Like Raya and Hamari, something like that. They both use specifically Southern Asian style martial arts. Muay Thai and Pencak Silat from Indonesia specifically. And it's kind of like how Frozen 2 took a lot more inspiration from the Sami people, and Frozen 1 just took a lot of inspiration from Scandinavian, especially Norse culture for their world, but they made it its own entity to have more creative freedom and to license it and trademark it. But yeah, Kumandra here is a way to kind of elevate and celebrate the South Asian cultures while Disney can technically own it. But it's still really cool to see it, and it's so beautifully rendered and designed too. Something I picked up right away, mainly because Sharon J. Zhao always calls it out, is that the dragons here don't use fire. In Chinese culture, and if you want to know more, check out her videos because they're amazing. And their dragons are creatures of water, and they don't necessarily breathe fire. And so all these old depictions of like Chinese style dragons that breathe fire are more of a Western sort of amalgamation and twisting of it. Traditionally, Chinese dragons don't breathe fire, and they're more connected with the element of water. And so we have a Disney movie with a Chinese inspired dragon or Asian style dragon that is connected specifically with water. Holy cow, it finally happened. And yeah, like all of the dragons here, and specifically Sisu is mainly known for being a swimmer, and the dragon gem actually controls water, so like it makes it flow against gravity. Like there's the opening shot where Raya is training in the temple shows the water flowing upstairs towards the dragon gem, and then it will manipulate water into the air against the flow of gravity. It's really interesting, visually speaking. And then as they collect more pieces of the dragon gem, Sisu begins to retain powers that were connected to her dragon brethren, namely shapeshifting, which has always been a thing in Eastern dragon mythology, as well as creating fog, which is tied to water, summoning rain, and then using the rain as platforms by basically manipulating the rain under their feet. Although I think they just do it with all of the water vapor in the air, because they're able to do it when it's not raining. I think I have to rewatch it. And then of course the big thing is that their heads are more like lion heads, and they have big flowing lion-like manes. This is something traditionally in Chinese and Eastern style dragons. So they actually tried and were trying to make it more faithful to these old traditions, instead of saying, you know, it's like Mushu, who's basically a Western style dragon, just elongated. Here Sisu and the other dragons in Kumandra are all water-based creatures, and they feature more like Chinese and Eastern style dragons. And it's especially like the map of Kumandra is basically one long dragon water feature with the little accentuations being the rivulets. And it's a really cool design. I definitely dig it. Speaking of the titular last dragon, Sisu, Awkwafina is not half bad. Granted, Awkwafina has been able to expand from being this sort of one-note comedic character actor to being more of an actress with, you know, the ability to try different things. I equate Sisu more with the genie from Aladdin, although the way they wrote Genie and the way that Robin Williams performed Genie was such lightning in a bottle that there's really no way to recapture it. But compared to things like, I don't know, the gargoyles from Hunchback of Notre Dame, Sisu is way better than that. When it comes to comedic side characters in a Disney movie, Sisu is honestly better than most of them. She's at least in the top half of the tier list, just because she has a chance to be more honest and be more sincere and have this character backstory about her being kind of a loser, honestly. They don't say it as much, but like they talk about how the formation of the Dragon Gem happened and Sisu was just basically there to do the last part of the job and didn't really use any of her own magic. It's an interesting, like her whole backstory is really interesting, and her whole appeal is that she sees the best in people, and even though she's proven wrong, she never loses her optimism. She's kind of like the antithesis to Raya, who has been so scorned by the world around her that she has become a total pessimist and only expects the worst from people. So it's a very interesting dichotomy, and the idea that it's up to Sisu to not only help Raya heal the world, but also heal the people of it. That, they hammer that theme all the time, but I'll get into that later. But yeah, Awkwafina is not quite as good as Robin Williams, but then very few people are, but she does great. The rest of the cast is also just phenomenal. Kelly Marie Tran, especially after the way that the Star Wars franchise and its toxic fan base treated her, gets to be a Disney princess now, so enjoy that, Star Wars fans. Rose is a Disney princess now. Suck it. And Kelly Marie Tran is able to handle the wide range of character development and emotional depth that Raya, endures through this movie, and she does a fantastic job. I could see her becoming just a consistent voice actress if she wanted to, but yeah, she's excellent. And then you round out the cast with Gemma Chan from the Crazy Rich Asians, which also featured Awkwafina, interestingly enough. She was the socialite cousin, sister, something like that, to Henry Golding. And then she was Minerva in Captain Marvel. I think she's supposed to show up in the Eternals as well. But yeah, Gemma Chan is the rival antagonist Namari. I knew I was going to mess that up. But Namari is kind of like a Catra character. That whole arc, Catra's whole arc is kind of condensed into 2 hours, because we see Namari as a very, selfish, conniving, sort of Namari is the reason why Raya essentially loses all of the optimism that her father tried to instill in her. And Namari throughout the movie is trying to do Fang's, the kingdom of Kumandra is divided into dragon parts. So Fang, spine, talon, tail, and heart.
Go Planet! By your powers combined, I am Captain Planet!
And so Namari is trying to do Fang's bidding with her, run by her mom, played by Sandra Oh. And Namari, over the course of the movie, thinks she's, is doing the sort of antagonistic things for Raya, towards Raya, the way that Catra did towards, I can't remember her name. She-Ra. Whatever. But yeah, the way that Catra acted towards She-Ra in the new She-Ra series for Netflix, but as the story went on, in terms of both Catra and Namari, you begin to see them doubt whether or not their methods are beneficial or good or working. And so Namari has doubts about whether or not she's doing the right thing, and that plays into the climax as well. And yeah, her and Raya's rivalry is the main conflict besides the whole end of the world thing going on. And it's their own sort of antagonistic behavior and their own, foibles, their own personality flaws that drive them to, really go at each other. But it takes finally letting go of that inner resentment, prejudice, hatred to finally heal Kumandra. But yeah, when I say that Catra's arc from She-Ra is condensed into 2 hours, I feel like this would have worked better as a mini-series. I feel like it's really ambitious, and I feel like in terms of storytelling, this would have benefited from like the Avatar treatment, the Last Airbender, not the Blue Cat people. And I feel like they wanted to get so much story in, but they only had 2 hours, and so they kind of have to leave some parts out that would have been really well developed if this was like a 13 episode long season or 20 episode long season or something like that. And I feel like they really could have built up on everything here, and maybe they can readapt it into a series or something for Disney Plus. Who knows? But this story itself feels really condensed. And I feel like if they had more time, like they would in the miniseries or something, they would have been able to elaborate so much more. But what we got was still fantastic. Back to the cast. I mentioned Sandra Oh, and her character is is like the main background antagonist who gets forgiven way too easily for how much trouble she's caused. Like, seriously, that woman basically ruined the world for everybody and just gets no comeuppance for it at all. We're just supposed to be like, well, world's back together. Let's sit with the person who basically ruined everything with no comeuppance. Like, at least Ozai faced comeuppance for all of the sins that he and the Fire Nation have committed. At least. Like, if Fang doesn't need to be punished as a nation, just that one person, she done messed everything up. How about we just punish her and the rest of us can move on with our lives? But yeah, the rest of the cast is also good here. You've got Daniel Day Kim as Raya's father, and he's not in the movie a whole lot, but he's good in it. You've also got Benedict Wong, who is this sort of minor side character. I say minor, even though that whole crew never really gets developed. Once again, things that would have been beneficial for a 13 episode season or something. Like, these side characters would have gotten more development, but that's more like things that could have been not what we got. What we did get was still fantastic. And Benedict Wong as this character from the Kingdom of Spine is really interesting to follow. And he's very much like a traditional barbarian character from D&D, and he's fun and has some great line deliveries, and yeah, he's a great character. And then, of course, Alan Tudyk does show up, because, of course, here, kind of like in Moana, he is an animal character. He is Tuk Tuk, Raya's armadillo pillbug steed. Yeah, that there is played by Alan Tudyk. Because he just shows up and just does silly voices for Disney now. That's his job. And you know what? Good for him. The kid actors playing the actual kids, like there's a toddler who is a con baby who works with a bunch of monkeys to steal stuff in the city of Talon, I believe. And you've got like a little 10-year-old who has to run his family's food boat. It's like a food truck, but it's on the river because it's in a place that's kind of like Venice, but it's, like a riverside city. They have markets like that in Thailand and Vietnam, I believe, and I think Myanmar. There's a bunch of places in South Asia that are riverside sort of like marketplaces that you can get stuff. And that's kind of what Tail is. Tail and Talon are designed like that. And yeah, so you got a little con baby with monkey sidekicks, and then you've got the little 10-year-old who runs the boat and cooks the food. And yeah, they don't really get a lot of development either, but the kid actors aren't terrible either. So yeah, they do the job well, as opposed to other kid voice actors and kid actors that kind of have that wooden delivery. The kids here are decent, but we'll see if they do anything else after this. They may never do anything else after this, for all we know. But they were all right for what they were. As I've mentioned before, the big themes for this movie are redemption and forgiveness and trust. Specifically trust. The basic history revolves around Kumandra being beset by this entity that, once again, doesn't have really any personality. It's just like an otherworldly evil energy entity that turns people to stone, and we don't really know anything about them or what happened to them. Once again, things that could have been expanded upon in a series, but I digress. But the Droon were stopped by the dragons, who sacrificed themselves by forming the dragon gem in order to stop the Droon, but in turn turned themselves to stone. And so the people of Kumandra held on to the gem. It was kept in the Kingdom of Heart, where that big, like, circular, like, arc is. And because Heart began to prosper, the other kingdoms became jealous, and so they all kind of divided. They fought amongst themselves over the gem, and so now everybody's distrustful of each other. And so Raya's dad tries to bring everybody together, but because Fang went and pulled some shit, because of course Fang, and then once again later Fang doesn't get it. Anyway, because Fang tries to make a go for the gem through Kumari, the gem gets broken, the Droon return, and the world is thrown into basically a post-apocalyptic wasteland. It's basically like Thanos snapped everybody, but instead of disappearing, they all turned to stone. And so Raya's trying to reunite the gems pieces to bring, to stop the Droon, and in doing so, and she reuses Sisu, the last dragon, to kind of use the magic. But the whole time they're still distrustful of each other, and while each of the motley crew that Raya gets represents the other kingdoms, Fang never really gets that representation until Kamari starts to show doubt in herself and in what they're doing, especially after her mom does give some really heinous, like, look, maybe things are better this way kind of talk. And it's like, oh, you're not a good person. Oh, and then, once again, no punishment for her, but at least Ozai had his bending taken and was thrown in prison. But no, I've got to forgive everybody. My Little Pony nonsense garbage. But the main storyline features and the main conflict is resolved when these disparate people from this divided kingdom let go of their prejudices and trust one another. And it's through that everything is kind of healed. And that's a very good message. The idea that letting go of your prejudices and your hate will allow you to move forward and heal. That's a good message. It's not a complete one-to-one, though, because things are a lot more complicated than that. Think of Zootopia's message of anti-racism and prejudice. Like, they had some great messages in there. It's not a complete one-to-one when you try to apply it to black and white and everything else. Like, it's a good overall message, but it's not gonna fit in... It's not a one-size-fits-all message, because there are a lot of extenuating circumstances and things are a bit more nuanced than that. But the message is still a positive one and a good one, and I commend them for that. Just because it doesn't necessarily work in the real world doesn't mean it's not something you shouldn't teach to kids. Teaching kids to let go of their prejudices. My Little Pony did the same thing. Once again, they had more time to because they were a show, not a movie. But the idea of letting go of your prejudices, letting go of your hatred of somebody, and wanting like vengeance and whatnot, and just learning to trust one another, that's a good message. And then, you have to, the thing about trust is, you can hand it to somebody, but they have to, prove that they are worth it. And so, it's that kind of things that are a lot more nuanced that are probably going to go over a lot of kids' heads. That's probably more for like adult stories. But, the idea of like teaching kids to trust people and, not rely on their prejudices to make their decisions and whatnot, and not be driven so much by vengeance and anger, that's not a bad message. And I'm not going to ding the movie because it doesn't fit in the real world for its messaging. It's like the same thing with Zootopia. Like, oh no, we shouldn't, the message is bad because it doesn't fit one-to-one with our problems. These are like parables. These are kid stories. These are fables. These are things we tell our kids to instill good values in them. And I would much rather a movie kind of instill the overall message of, letting go of prejudice and hate, as opposed to like being it super specifically try to tie it into our real world problems. Start with the big picture, then we can add the details later on as they get older. So Raya and the Last Dragon, honestly, the current high point of 2021. Not worth $30 to watch at home unless you've got like a family or something. That's kind of where this $20, $30 sort of home rental fee works the best, is when you can't afford to take a lot of people out to the theater. So for like families and for, large groups of friends, that makes sense. But if you're going to watch this at all, either watch it at home and have people chip in for the $30 fee, or wait for the next 3 months for June to come out, and just know that it's going to be good when it finally does come out on Disney Plus for free, minus a subscription fee. And this is the high watermark right now, and I'm very curious to see what's going to top it.